3 sinister true alone at work experiences revealed. 3 haunted encounters with the unexplained. Jess had always thought of the old convenience store as just that, a store. But as she stepped into the eerie silence of her new job, the reality of working nights clawed at her sanity. The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees, and every creak of the floorboard echoed like a warning. She could have sworn she heard whispers, soft and sinister, curling around her like icy smoke. Her heart raced as she stacked shelves, fighting back the impulse to glance over her shoulder. What did she hear? Could it be the wind or something darker? On her first night, she felt eyes on her. Peering through the glass door, she saw a shadowy figure cloaked in a dark hoodie, lingering under the flickering streetlight. The chills slunk up her spine, keeping her frozen in place. Just nerves, she told herself. An overactive imagination. But she couldn't shake the prickling sensation that she wasn't alone. With trembling hands, she flicked the lock, wishing for the comfort of her home where Timmy played video games with fervor, oblivious to her growing anxiety. Was it worth the money if the price was her peace of mind? The second night brought new horrors. Lured by curiosity, she approached the dimly lit employee's only door, slightly ajar. It whispered promises of secrets hidden in dust and forgotten lives. Heart pounding, she slipped inside. Old furniture sat lifelessly, an oppressive weight of decay pressing against her. But it was the wall that caught her breath. Pictures of past employees lined up like witnesses of a crime. Familiar faces stared back at her. Home in the suburbs had never felt so suffocating. Trust no one. The jagged scrawl made her blood run cold. Who had written it? And why? That night felt different, electric, like a storm brewing. She brushed it off, but panic crept in like the creeping shadows. As she leaned against the wall, each minute felt like a countdown. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The clock's hands moved too slow, and that S when she heard it, a soft tapping, a rhythmic pulse against the floor. She spun around in a frenzy, breath hitching, but nothing was there. A scream lodged in her throat. Alone. But surely not. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The third night fell heavy, suffocating her like a dark cloud. Jess was sleep-deprived, her nerves frayed and electric. Whispers taunted her, swirling around her head like a tempest. Each creak of the store felt like footsteps stalking her, hunting her. Shadows danced wickedly in her periphery. Was she dreaming? Each heartbeat echoed in her ears as she scanned the aisles, fighting the urge to run. Just as she grabbed her things, she saw it, a newspaper clipping taped to a wall, screaming forgotten secrets. The words "the past is never truly buried" haunted her, and a voice hissed chillingly in her ear. Just as she reached for the door, a breath colder than winter whispered, "We've been waiting for you." And suddenly, Jess realized to escape the grip of terror, she'd have to confront the relentless darkness lurking within her own community. Would she be strong enough to face whatever hunted her? Or would she, too, become just another name lost to the shadows? The fourth night slithered in, thick with tension and the promise of dread. Jess arrived at work, the late hour cloaking the convenience store in an even deeper shroud of darkness. The buzz of the fluorescent lights fought against the hum of impending doom that filled the air. She unlocked the door, nerves itching under her skin, whispering warnings. No matter how hard she tried to shake it off, she couldn't disregard the growing sense of foreboding. As she began stocking the shelves, Jess's eyes darted around the store, catching fleeting glimpses of movement in her peripheral vision. Was it just her imagination? Or was something lurking just beyond her line of sight? The shadows seemed thicker, heavier, lurking around corners as if patiently waiting for her to let down her guard. With each flick of a can onto the shelf, the store's silence pressed down on her like a weight, an invisible force that wrapped around her. The unsettling tapping sound from the night before returned, echoing softly at first, little more than a murmur, but growing louder with each passing moment. It was relentless, rhythmic, a pulse echoing from the back room where she had seen the door ajar. Against her better judgment, curiosity pricked at her. She tried to suppress it, but it bloomed anew as she felt the call of secrets hidden deep within the shadows. The employee's only door beckoned her with a promise that felt like a curse. She took a deep breath, the chill wrapping tighter around her like an old sweater, and walked toward it, each step heavier than the last. Pushing the door open, Jess braced herself against the creaking hinges. The room was engulfed in an impenetrable blackness. She fumbled for the light switch, fingers trembling as they danced along the cracked wall. The flickering light illuminated the peeling paint and dust motes carried in the stale air. And there they were again, the grainy photographs of the past employees, their expressions frozen in unsettling smiles, eyes lingering on nothing as if waiting for someone who would never return. But the last photo caught her attention, the only one not taped to the wall. It lay crumpled on the floor, edges rough and torn, face down as if it had been carelessly discarded. Swallowing her breath, she bent to pick it up. Flipping it revealed a familiar face, one she almost recognized. Her heart raced as the room felt smaller. The figure smiled back at her, but the eyes told another story. They seemed to bore into hers, pleading, warning. The name on the bottom sent a jolt through her, the same name she had seen in the clipping. Then it hit her, the photo wasn't just someone she didn't know. It was someone from her hometown. Just a voice whispered directly in her ear, chilling her to the bone. She swung around, but there was nothing behind her, only the unsettling emptiness of the storage room. It came again, more commanding now, cutting through the silence, a whisper that felt like a scream. The lights flickered wildly, casting shadows that danced with malicious intent. Panic gripped her chest as if a vice had closed around her heart. She bolted for the door, the urge to flee crashing through her. But something held her back, an unseen force, or perhaps the haunting echoes of the unknown that lurked just beyond her comprehension. Just as she stepped into the murky light of the store, she hesitated, the words from the paper burning in her mind. The past is never truly buried. What if her past was what had brought her here? What if those pictures weren't just reminders, but connections that ran deeper than she could imagine? The whispers clawed at her thoughts, and beneath the dread, a pulse of determination ignited. Before she could think, Jess flung the door open, ready to confront the shadows outside. And there, silhouetted under the sickly flicker of the streetlight, stood the hooded figure from the first night, waiting. "Welcome back," it croaked, voice low and menacing. "We've been expecting you." Was fear about to seal her fate? Or was this the moment she found out the truth of the shadows stalking her? The night was just beginning, and Jess was about to dive deeper into the darkness than ever before. Could she uncover the sinister truth before it consumed her whole? Jess's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the hooded figure. Fear pulsed through her veins like ice water. Every instinct screamed to run, yet she stood frozen, tethered to dread. The sickly glow of the light painted the figure in stark relief, its outline shifting as though it was made of shadows itself, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. "Who are you?" Jess's voice trembled, wavering under the weight of unease. The figure remained motionless, but its hood shifted slightly, revealing nothing but darkness within. "SNT, at time you learned the truth?" it whispered, each word laced with an unnatural chill. The shadows around her seemed to hum with anticipation, and the air crackled with a mix of danger and intrigue. Jess felt the store press in on her, walls closing around a truth she hadn't been ready to face. Something deep within her wanted to leave, to run far away, but curiosity clawed back, urging her to engage. "What truth?" she asked, her voice barely audible. The figure tilted its head ever so slightly. "The truth of those who came before you, and those who will come after." That line sliced through her mind like a knife. Echoes of the photographs swirling in her head morphed into a vision of the figures smiling, of their eyes wide and frightened. They had all been brought here for a reason, hadn't they? A surge of anger mixed with fear bubbled in her chest. What happened to them? She demanded, her bravery growing, her heart racing. Lured by dreams, consumed by shadows, it murmured, as if tasting its own words. You're one of them too, Jess. Your name binds you here. A deep sense of foreboding settled upon her, as if an unseen weight was pressing down. That name, the name attached to the face in the photo, was more than a coincidence. It was part of a puzzle that expanded beyond her comprehension, stretching across time and fear, pulling her ever closer to an indefinable horror. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging her into darkness for a split second longer than before. Just as her mind began to spiral, the figure stepped forward, brushing against the edge of the dim light. Your past has come for you. You cannot escape it. Not this time. Terror gripped her heart, tightening like a vice. She stumbled back, lost in the dense web of emotions. Was she truly trapped by something that fed on her fear? The echoes of the whispers returned, swirling around her, beckoning her closer. Jess, you must choose. In a desperate attempt to reclaim her control, she turned, racing back into the store, her heart pounding against her ribs. Her footsteps echoed through the aisles, a frantic rhythm of flight in a nightmare. She needed a plan, something to break the cycle. But as she reached the front counter, a fleeting glimpse caught her eye, a flicker of movement in the glass door, reflecting another hooded figure standing across the street, eyes gleaming with a sinister hunger. Come play with us, it called, voice dripping with malice. Suddenly entrapped, Jess felt the breath of desperation clawing at her throat. She whipped around, searching for an escape, but shadows clung to the walls like desperate hands, luring her back into their embrace. The weight of everything she had uncovered crashed down, threatening to swallow her whole. Choose wisely, Jess, the first figure taunted, inching closer. Your choice will seal your fate. Chaos erupted in her mind. Should she confront her past or run from it? Would the truth bring liberation or destruction? With every heartbeat feeling like it could be her last, she faced the shadows, eyes narrowed in resolve. Before she could act, the lights cut out entirely, enveloping her in total darkness. The whispers morphed into tormented wails, spiraling into a jagged chorus of despair. In that harrowing darkness, she heard her own name murmured again and again. The echoes clawed at her sanity, and Jess realized, with a sinking feeling, that the choices she made in the suffocating dark might not just define her fate but also the fate of everyone that came before her. What horrors awaited if she didn't escape this once and for all? Stay tuned. The truth was more horrific than she could imagine. Jess stumbled backward in the oppressive darkness, panic clawing at her throat. Her heart thudded like a war drum, each beat echoing in the void. She squeezed her eyes shut, remembering the feel of the cold, smooth floor beneath her feet. She wanted to believe this was just a bad dream, a nightmare from which she could wake and erase the shadows haunting her thoughts. But the cold whisper of Jess curdled her blood. It came from everywhere and nowhere, wrapping around her senses, stinging her skin. She fumbled her way through the blackness, desperate for a light switch, a door, anything that might lead her back to safety. A twitch of movement caught her attention. The second figure, the one from outside, slipped inside the store, the faint glow from the street barely illuminating its hooded form. It stalked forward, an apparition born from the depths of her terror. Jess's breath hitched as the whispers escalated into a cacophony, urging her into the maw of despair. Join us, Jess, join us, they chanted, a haunting melody that twisted her resolve. What do you want from me? She shouted, her voice breaking into the silence that followed. Your past will not let you go, the first figure's voice slithered through the blackness. We are all connected, stitched together by fear and fate. You shall see. Suddenly, a sharp snap, a flicker, a pulse of light returned. The store flickered into view, revealing a labyrinth of aisles, each more imposing than the last. The first figure hovered near the counter, its fiery eyes locked onto her, while the other moved to stand behind her, trapping her in a snare of chilling presence. Look, the leading figure hissed. Look at what you've become. Jess's gaze followed its pointing finger. Her own reflection stared back from a cracked mirror on the wall, but it was distorted, twisted. The Jess in the mirror wore her features like a mask of horror, eyes blackened, lips pulled into a maniacal grin that was not hers. She squeezed her eyes shut again. "This isn't real," she screamed, almost pleading. "Oh, but it is, sweet Jess," the voice cooed from all around, "and you must choose. The light or the dark. Which will you embrace?" As Jess forced her eyes open, each heartbeat threatened to drown her. The figures erupted into laughter, a cacophony of screams and taunts that reverberated off the walls. The shelves began to shake, flickering items tumbling down like broken dreams, scattering reality. Suddenly, a bright light burst from the back of the store, cutting through the malevolence like a sword. Jess squinted, heart racing with both fear and desperation. Could this be her way out? "Don't be foolish," the second figure warned, its voice cold and laced with malice. "The light is where they wait." She hesitated, dread pooling in her stomach. What if the light held the answers to her questions? What if it led to the same fate as the others? But as she looked into the darkness, the shadows writhed, seemingly alive, hungry for her submission. Jess took a step toward the light, fingertips tingling with the possibility of it offering safety. She didn't want to be swallowed whole by this nightmare. "Jess," her own voice cried out once more, echoing in a way that sounded foreign yet eerily intimate. "Choose or lose." That was the moment when her resolve shattered. She couldn't stand idle, paralyzed in this space of terror any longer. With pounding heart, she sprinted toward the light, hoping against hope it would lead her to freedom. But as the warmth enveloped her, she felt a creeping dread. What if she wasn't the only one drawn to it? In a spine-chilling instant, lyrics of the past whispered once again, taunting her choices. Welcome home. The light flickered, and darkness coiled tight around her. But she would break free, wouldn't she? As Jess's body thudded against the threshold, the world around her darkened once more, pulling her back toward the suffocating shadows. She gasped, realization dawning that catching her breath was just as elusive as escaping her fate. What awaited within the light? Could it be salvation or perhaps an even deeper darkness? The choice hung ripe in the air, a whisper of terror as she plunged forward into uncertainty. The light engulfed her like a wave, but it wasn't warm. It felt cold and clammy, wrapping around her body like a wet shroud. Jess stumbled, blinded for a second. As her vision cleared, panic clawed back at her insides, twisting her stomach into knots. The horror of the store flickered away, revealing a vast, dimly lit hallway lined with doors, each one heavy and foreboding. "Where am I?" she whispered, the sound echoing against the walls. "Home." The word rang out from behind her, and she spun. The figures were back, their shapes shifting in and out of focus. The first figure sneered, its razor teeth glistening. "You're where you've always belonged, Jess." Heart racing, she moved down the corridor, the echoes of her footsteps bouncing off the cold tile. She pressed against the wall, sliding her fingers along the surface as if searching for a means of escape. The air was thick with memories, each door whispering secrets of moments long past, the laughter of friends, the warmth of family, and the shadows that had loomed just outside her view. "Don't you want to see?" came the soothing hiss from behind. "All those moments you hid from? Don't you want to face them?" "I don't want to face anything," she shouted, her voice rising in defiance. But as she spoke, the doors began to creak open, almost teasingly, revealing glimpses of her past, each one like a knife twisting in her heart. The first door showed her school days, the whispers, the stares, the isolation. The second revealed an argument with her best friend about a betrayal that had threatened to tear them apart. Another featured a darkened room where shadows stalked her thoughts. With every step, Jess felt the weight of these memories pressing in on her. No, this isn't how it happened. She desperately wished to close her eyes, to erase it all, but she was rooted to the spot. "Embrace it, Jess," the first figure urged. "Embrace who you are." Sweat dripped down her back as she continued forward, battling against the urge to flee. The next door swung open, squeaking on its rusty hinges. Jess peered inside, her breath catching. It was a twisted reflection of her childhood home, coated in dust and shadows. Inside, She saw her younger self sitting alone, her knees hugged to her chest, eyes vacant. "Help me," the child whispered, voice quavering. "I can't get out, stop it," Jess screamed, backing away. But it was too late. The figure stepped forward, blocking her path, the laughter growing around her like a swarm of bees threatening to sting. "Join us, Jess," they crowded closer, breath hot and rancid against her skin. "We're waiting for you." "No, I want tea," she gasped, pushing past them, desperation kicking into overdrive. Just as she thought she might escape, her shoulder collided with the edge of another doorframe. Panic surged, and she spun around, ready to fight back against the figures looming near her. Suddenly, the corridor itself shuddered. The walls seemed to tremble, the ceiling shifting ominously as if the entire building was breathing. "You cannot escape your fate," they chorused with adrenaline surging. Jess raced down the hallway, her heart a wild animal drumming in her ears. The laughter morphed into shrill screams, an orchestra of torment that echoed through her mind. She had to find a door that led out, a way back to reality. The final door glimmered at the end of the hall, bathed in an unsettling light. Jess felt a pull toward it, like an invisible string tethering her to something far more sinister than the rest. Before she could reach for the handle, the shadows darkened and surged forward, a raging tide that threatened to sweep her away. It swallowed her screams, and just when she thought she'd be lost forever, she felt something that made her freeze cold hands gripped her from behind. "Welcome home, Jess," they whispered, the darkness wrapping around her like a noose tightening, and that moment, Jess understood. The light wasn't an escape. It was merely a deception, a trap set by those desperate to reclaim her. With a final surge of will, she turned and prepared to fight, her body trembling with dread. But in the darkness, what awaited her was something she never saw coming, and just like that, she was plunged into the unknown. Would she confront what haunted her, or would she vanish forever into the shadows? The darkness constricted around Jess, squeezing the air from her lungs. Panic surged in her chest, eagerness to escape battling the dread of what lurked behind her. The cold hands still gripped her shoulders, their fingers like icy tendrils digging into her skin. Whispers floated through the blackness, swirling around her head like a tempest. "Don't fight it," the figures urged, their voices smooth yet serrated, carrying a sickening familiarity. "You belong to us, Jess." "No," she shouted, clawing at the hands, but they held fast. She felt a pull, a grotesque desire drawing her deeper into the shadows that swirled around her. It was a promise of understanding, of belonging, and yet it was laced with malice. A grotesque image flashed before her eyes, her reflection, twisted and warped, grinning back at her from a pool of darkness. It moved against her will, a puppet dancing to the tune of the figures. "Embrace your darkness, Jess," it crooned, lips curling in malicious delight. "Embrace who you truly are." Jess squeezed her eyes shut, forcing herself to breathe. She could not be this thing. She shook her head violently, trying to banish the suffocating whispers. Just as determination surged in her, the chill brightened to a searing light behind her eyelids. She opened them, and for a fleeting moment, the oppressive shadows lifted. A door stood before her, glistening with promise, a beacon of hope. With her heart pounding, she sprinted toward it, ignoring the specter's howls of frustration. Her hand clasped the cool handle, twisting with every ounce of energy left. With a burst of bravado, she pulled it open, praying for escape. But the moment she crossed the threshold, the world twisted again. She stumbled through, landing not on a floor, but on air. Jess fell, tumbling into a void, light and darkness colliding around her until she gasped, her body jolting into consciousness. She lay on hard, cold concrete, surrounded by gray shadows. The room was empty, save for the flickering fluorescent lights that hummed their eerie tune above. It felt familiar, the warehouse where she had spent so many late nights, but something was off. The silence was unsettling, straining against her ears. Jess rose, every nerve alert, her heartbeat echoing in the oppressive quiet. "Is anyone here?" she called, her voice breaking the stillness. The moment she spoke, shadows crept along the walls. They twisted and morphed into dark shapes, crawling forward like a black tide. A knot formed in her throat. Just a chorus rose, a blend of her own voice and those figures she had encountered. It was as if they had seeped through the walls, drawn by her call. You can't escape. A chill climbed her spine as the shadows broke free. Twisting into forms she recognized the betrayals, the failures, the regrets of her past swirling in a grotesque dance. The vision of her younger self peered through the haze, her eyes reflecting an abyss of sorrow. "Help me," the child cried again, echoing through the labyrinth of her mind. Jess stumbled back, her breath quickening. The room began to shrink around her, squeezing her like a vice. "No, I won't be trapped again," she screamed, darting towards the entrance she had just come through. But it was gone. In its place stood a wall solid, unyielding. She pounded against it, panic doubling her efforts, but it only reverberated with her cries. The shadows curled closer, shameless and hungry, their laughter like nails scraping against glass. "Join us, Jess," they taunted, a chilling unity of her doubts. Despair weighed heavy and thick. She was losing herself to the dark. The flickering lights flickered violently, the shadows flickering in and out as if they were alive, feeding off her fear, feeding off her realization. Was she truly meant to be here? Was this darkness her fate? Then, she felt something. A thin tendril of light tracing her spine, a memory of strength, of fighting back against the shadows in her own mind. "No, I can't surrender," she shouted, channeling everything she had left. But the laughter swelled, drowning her cries. The silhouettes surged as if to snatch her away, pulling her closer to their malevolent embrace. As the darkness closed in, an idea struck her like a lightning bolt. If she couldn't escape, maybe she could turn the tide. But would there be enough time to fight back before it devoured her whole? With renewed determination, she took a deep breath, eyes blazing as she prepared to confront the shadow of her own, making what could lie within the heart of that dark power. Would she find the strength to reclaim her light, or would she be lost forever? Jess gasped, the chill scraping at her skin as the shadows closed in. She could feel their pull, the weight of unspeakable dread cascading around her. But there was something else, a flicker of defiance sparking deep within her. She squared her shoulders, shaking off the icy fingers gripping her. "I'm not afraid of you," she yelled, her voice ringing in the claustrophobic silence. The shadows recoiled momentarily, hesitating as if caught off guard. But then they surged again, their whispers turning violent. "You should be," they hissed, darkness swirling like a storm. They twisted into phantoms that circled her, mocking and jeering. Their hollow eyes bored into her, dredging up every ounce of paralyzed fear from her past. "You are nothing. You've always been nothing." Jess clenched her fists. Memories flashed through her mind, her childhood, the failure of her first job, the friendships that faded into oblivion. Each recollection a jagged shard of regret and pain. "No more," she howled, sifting through the despair to grab hold of the tendril of light that had ignited within her. In that moment, the flickering overhead lights cast erratic patterns on the walls. Jess felt a strange warmth engulf her, embers sparking to life in her veins. With a fierce roar, she thrust her arm out, channeling every ounce of strength. The walls pulsed, and the shadows shrieked as if her defiance burned them. "You don't control me," she cried, the force of her will resonating. The darkness writhed and twisted violently, as if it were a living entity wounded by her rebellion. As she fought back, a looming figure emerged from the haze, a tall shadow, shifting and gnarled. Its face shimmered momentarily, an abyssal grin stretching across its features, eyes like burning coals. "You think you can defy the inevitable?" it rasped, a cold, blood-curdling laughter echoing. A seismic jolt of panic thundered through Jess, but she pressed on, her heart racing. "I choose to fight," she declared, gathering the embers of her strength like a shield. She could feel the warmth, a glowing sphere enveloping her, pushing back against the darkness. "You don't own me." The ground trembled beneath her feet, raw energy coursing through the air. The shadows recoiled, slashing at her light with a frenzy. They were desperate, clawing at her essence. "Join us!" came their cries, echoing like a horror show. "You are one of us." "No!" Jess screamed, tears streaming down her face. She could feel the torment within her pulse, the memories clawing at her mind. "I was never one of you." Mustering all of her might, she thrust her hands forward, releasing the brilliant light as a wave. The dark phantoms screeched, enveloped by the radiance. They shattered like glass, fragments cascading through the air, vanishing into the cavernous void. With each broken piece, the room pulsed brighter, and for a moment, a sense of relief washed over her. But the light didn't last. An oppressive weight followed, coalescing behind her, something far darker than the shadows she had just banished. Whirling around, she gasped. Standing in the dark corner of the room was another figure more corporeal, defined. It loomed larger than the rest, its presence suffocating. "You thought it was over?" It crooned, voice smooth like silk dipped in poison. This shadow was different. It oozed confidence, a sinister allure. "I am the true essence of your fear. You can fight the darkness, Jess, but can you fight me?" Jess's heart slammed in her chest. Just when she thought she was free, something worse had emerged. "You're just a part of me," she shouted defiantly, but doubt flickered inside her. "You'll find," it whispered, stepping closer. "The darkness will always be waiting." Suddenly, the air thickened, and the walls began to pulse like a heartbeat, closing in again. Jess's breath quickened, and for a moment, she faltered. How could she battle something born from within, something that knew her every vulnerability? "Face me, Jess," it beckoned, shadow curling around it like a living cloak. Face your true self. As the figure lunged, Jess steeled herself, ready to fight for her very soul. But could she unravel the depths of her own darkness before it consumed her whole? What would she discover about the shadow within? Jess's breath hitched as the shadow lunged, the weight of its presence wrapping around her like a vice. The air crackled, ricocheting with dread that threatened to strangle her. For a heartbeat, she stood frozen, staring into those ember-like eyes that flickered with malicious curiosity. She could sense that this entity knew her every fear, every insecurity. "No," she shouted louder, stepping backward. "I refuse to let you win." But the darkness rushed forward, a wall of swirling malice. It pushed against her light, suppressing the warmth that had once felt like a shield. Jess felt the heat of it receding, the edges of her courage fraying. Panic clawed at her throat, making it harder to breathe. The spectral figure smiled, its grin widening until it consumed its entire face. "You think this is a fight?" taunted. "You're lost in your own mind. The more you resist, the more powerful I become." With each word, Jess could feel her will crumbling, doubt flooding in like a tidal wave. Was this struggle futile? If this shadow was truly her, how could she ever be free? The whispers of the past echoed in her ears, her failures, her losses, each a ghostly reminder of how fragile she was. She swayed on her feet, heart racing. "Face your true self," it replied smoothly, taunting. "You've been running from who you really are." But a flicker of realization caught fire inside her. If this creature was her shadow, if it thrived on her doubts, perhaps she held the key. She recalled the warmth she had summoned before. It might be faded, but it was still there, lingering beneath the surface, ready to ignite. "No," Jess said, firming her resolve. "You're not me. You're just a reflection of every mistake, every fear I've ever had." It glared back, irritation sparking its fiery eyes. "You think you can separate us? You will always be haunted by your weaknesses." With a surge, Jess felt a rush of energy, igniting her core. "I embrace my weaknesses," she shouted, her voice rising above the cacophony of shadows. "They V-shaped me, but they don't define me." The room exploded into light as she reached deep inside, pulling forth the warmth she had nearly extinguished. It burst forth like a solar flare, surrounding her, illuminating the darkness encroaching from all sides. The shadow reeled, its taunts turning to shrieks as her surge swallowed it momentarily. "No!" it howled, the sound a chilling rush of wind. "You can't do this." But Jess was resolute. The light enveloped her in a cocoon, a shield against the terror that thrummed constantly, pushing, shoving, clawing to regain control. "I'm done letting fear dictate my life." The bright energy consumed the room, illuminating every corner, every shadow, forcing them back. The air felt electric, humming with the push against the creature. She could see its dark form slipping, pulling away like smoke fading in the sunlight. Yet, just as quickly, a darkness formed behind her. She turned as another figure emerged, not just a shadow, but a ghastly replication of herself. A twisted version with sorrowful eyes and a mouth that dripped resentment. "You cannot escape, Jess," it whispered, breath-chilling. "You can fight the shadows, but you can never escape your own reflection." Jess's heart sank as the truth dripped like poison. This was the piece of her she had long buried, the one she refused to confront. The weight of her regrets shifted, and dread trickled in. Could she truly confront every facet of her darkness? Would it devour her whole? As the confrontation loomed, Jess felt like she was slipping between two worlds, one shimmering with hope, the other swallowing her fears whole. Would she embrace it or let it consume her? She steeled herself, the new reflection stepping closer, its grin echoing the sinister allure of the shadows. The battle for her soul had only just begun. What would happen when the lines between light and dark blurred? Would Jess find the strength to face the ultimate truth? Jess's mind raced as the reflection closed the gap between them. The air grew thick, stifling, as if a heavy curtain had been drawn across the light she had fought to summon. The twisted version of herself, with sunken eyes and a smirk that dripped with malice, felt like an anchor pulling her back down into despair. "Why deny me?" it hissed, voice a serpentine whisper. "You can't escape what you truly are." With a trembling voice, Jess shot back. "You're nothing but a distortion. A lie I've let fester for too long." The reflection tilted its head, its grin widening unnaturally. "A lie? I am your truth, Jess. Every moment you tried to run away, I was right here, laughing." A shudder ripped through her. Every encounter with failure, every decision that had spiraled into darkness flashed before her eyes, her dismissed dreams, friendships lost, paths not taken. It flooded her mind, drowning her will. The reflection's laughter bounced around her, echoing within her soul. "No!" Jess screamed, forcing the syllables out past the clamoring doubt. "I will not let you take me." With a swift movement, she reached out, radiating all the warmth she could muster. The cocoon of light that had begun to flicker around her surged back, pulsing like a heartbeat. The gruesome copy winced, the light searing against its shadowy skin, each inch of the radiance forcing it to recoil. But it wasn't enough. Jess could feel herself shaking, the energy waning. "You're so inconsistent," the reflection taunted, voice dripping with mock pity. "You can't control this chaos inside you. You'll always falter." The words struck deep, a dagger puncturing her resolve. She staggered back, gasping for breath. Something inside her cracked open. Every setback she thought was buried began to spill out, flooding her thoughts. "Embrace me, Jess," her reflection crooned, voice velvet and dangerous. "Let me show you the truth about your helplessness." In that moment, everything felt impossibly dark. The edges of her courage began to fray again. She remembered the choking void of loneliness from her earlier days, how settling for less had become a habit, how shadows of disappointment had gnawed at her for far too long. The room faded, merging with her memories, tormenting her with their vividness. Jess could sense the malicious energy swirling, mocking her. But deep within, a flicker ignited. Not a blaze, but enough to remind her. "You are not my truth," she shouted, her voice defiant yet uncertain. "Just a manifestation of my fears." The reflection screeched, a sound like shattering glass, but Jess held her ground, bathing the room in light again. "I am more than my fears." As the glow spread, it pushed against the darkness, a primal fight raging within. The reflection writhed in pain, its form distorting as if each bit of light scorched it. But in the depths of escape, something unexpected happened. Without warning, the room around her darkened once more, and with it, the air grew bitterly cold. A new presence sneaked into this confrontation, a weight of despair heavier than the reflection. An anguished whisper sliced through the din, echoing from the very walls. "You can't defeat everything." Jess turned her head, eyes flitting in every direction. The shadows began to writhe, a new figure emerging in the depths. It cradled despair in its arms, shrouded in the remnants of her past defeats. Was this another part of her torment? Or something deeper, more sinister waiting to be unleashed? She felt the cold creeping in much faster now, a familiar fear creeping back into the corners of her heart. "What now?" she murmured, her voice cracking. Would she face yet another version of herself? Or would this new entity break her completely? As the specter loomed, Jess found herself on the edge of a perilous choice, one that could either save or obliterate her. Who would she become if this new darkness swallowed her whole? Would she ever find the light again? As Jess stood trembling in the cold grip of fear, the air thickened with an unbearable weight. The new specter, cloaked in shadows and despair, approached, and Jess's heart raced, an impending storm brewing inside her. This was no mere figment of her imagination, but a manifestation of every hurt, every moment she had tucked away into the recesses of her mind. "Face me," Jess it hissed, voice dripping with malice, a vile echo of the shadows that had tormented her before. "You are nothing without your darkness." Her stomach twisted, the familiar coil of anxiety tightening around her. Every hurtful thought, every regret pulsed in her mind, threatening to drown out her resolve. But deep down, she remembered the embers of defiance she had stoked. "I am not nothing," she shouted back, her voice stronger than she felt. The specter paused, taken aback by her sudden spark. "You think you can fight me? I am your past, the very essence of your fears. I am always within you." "Maybe," Jess responded, determination flooding through her. "But I won't let you dictate who I am." With renewed purpose, she reached inside herself and grasped the light still flickering there. She felt it bloom, filling her soul with warmth. In that moment, the memories of laughter, of love, of moments where joy reigned supreme surged alongside her fears. They were all part of her story. The specter screeched, the sound a cacophony of despair, but she pressed on. "You don't own me. You never did." As her light swelled, the shadows recoiled, twisting against her brilliance. Jess could see them shifting, fear now etched on their faces. "You can break us," they screamed. "You can't escape." But Jess had made her choice. "I embrace my past," she declared, her voice cutting through the murk like a knife. "I will not be defined by the shadows that haunt me." With that, she unleashed her light forward, a radiant wave that swept away their darkness. They shrieked, the sound piercing and raw, as their forms disintegrated like ashes in the wind, scattering into nothingness. And as the last wretched figment of her fear evaporated, Jess collapsed on the cold floor, panting heavily. The silence around her felt almost alien, and the fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, no longer menacing but oddly comforting. For the first time, she felt the weight lift from her chest, the crushing anxiety that had held her hostage in her own mind slowly dissipating. She had confronted her demons, faced the darkness within, and emerged renewed. Taking a deep breath, Jess stood, the remnants of her past swirling softly around her, transformed. Each shadow felt lighter, each memory less frightening, now infused with understanding. They would be her guides, her lessons as she stepped into the light. Jess stepped toward the door of the convenience store, no longer a place of dread, but a threshold of a new beginning. She opened it, bathed in the flickering glow of the streetlight outside. As she crossed the threshold into the night air, she heard soft whispers float around her. But this time, they were not taunts, they were affirmations, kind and nurturing. "You are free, Jess. You are enough." Feeling the cool breeze brush against her skin, Jess smiled, warmth radiating from within. The shadows would always be there, but they no longer defined her. She could move forward, equipped with both her light and her darkness. Onward, she whispered to herself as she walked down the street. The past wasn't something to fear anymore, but a part of her story. And with each step, she carved a new path, one of hope, strength, and resilience. But just before she turned the corner, she felt a flicker of doubt clawing at her heart. Those shadows, lurking in the recesses of her mind. Would they return? She paused, turning back for one last look at the store. The lights flickered once more, and a familiar shape emerged in the distance, cloaked in shadow, but the feeling was far less menacing than before. "Jess," it called out, voice echoing warmly. "We all await your return, but on your own terms." She nodded, a newfound confidence igniting in her soul. This was not the end but the start. And with that, she walked on, leaving the past behind, ready for everything that lay ahead. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Let us go. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Jess's journey. What do you think will happen next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.